Look what we have on the front page of our local dailies. Let me start with the Star newspaper that I have with me. On the front page, Farouk Kibet, the total man in Ruto presidency. On the front page, Farouk Kibet, the total man in Ruto presidency. The former Warren councillor undoubtedly wields immense power in the new administration. There is a pull out here. It's a complete profile on who Farouk Kibet is, and of course the previous regimes, starting from Jomo Kenyatta to President Uhuru Kenyatta's regime. In President Kenyatta's, Jomo Kenyatta's, we had Mbiu Koinange. In Daniel Arap Moi, we had Nicholas Bewot, who was famously known as the Total Man, and Mark Too. In Mwai Kibaki's regime was Professor Nick Wanjohi, and in President Kenyatta's regime, there was Nje Muturi and Jomo Geshaga. But now, in Ruto's government, we have Farouk Kibet. Let me quote what Ndindi Nyoro said. Ndindi Nyoro said that Farouk's office is that of the president of Kenya because you can't access the president if Farouk says no. Even the deputy president, who is my friend, to reach him, Farouk must say yes. And there is an intention to this on who should be handling president's private diary. And Farouk Kibet in this government is the man in question. All right. On the second page, I've to touch soil to help my son with the CBC homework, says parent with deaf kid. Currently, there are very few schools that cater for the needs of deaf children. This is just but some of the predicaments that parents go through. With the CBC curriculum as it is. Sleepless nights for families displaced by SGR in Naivasha. They fear that they could miss out on compensation despite state taking over land. They now fear they should miss out on compensation, and of course hundreds of them families displaced by the extension of the meter gauge railway line from the dry port of to Longonot town have also not been compensated. One of those affected says that one of the displaced families says that the two railway lines had not been paid years after the two projects were completed. That is just but a plight of such families. Very quickly, okay, you can take a look at that story of Farouk Kibet is on page 4 and page 5. Here, a complete page layout. IBC denied police officers lunch during August poll, says report. IPOA says that commission failed to request an adequate number of cops overworking them. This emerged in its polls monitoring report dubbed IPOA Monitoring on Police Conduct during the 2022 general election, launched last Friday. IBC had a budget of 44 billion shillings for the general election, which was financed by public funds, appropriation in aid and development partners. Moving on, Governor Chani reopens Kumbani Fresh Produce Market. That is now the reopening follows a Monday morning fracas between private security officers, angry residents and traders. Several people were injured and left with deep cuts. Police officers from the Kumbani police post had to intervene to restore order. Very quickly on politics, Azimio Kenya Kwanza to meet amid jostling for House committees. Parliament is expected to constitute House Business Committee as its first business. While Azimio will be meeting today, that is on Tuesday today, Kenya Kwanza has not agreed on the day, with insiders say that they are still waiting for President William Ruto, who is still in Tanzania, to confirm the date for the meeting. The Azimio meeting, coming hours before the House sitting, will approve members of the crucial House Business Committee and the Committee on Appointments. And these two committees are quite crucial for the running of Parliament. And finally, anxious moment as interviews for PS positions begin tomorrow. Shortlisted individuals are required to carry clearances from EACC, KRA, and help. While those, the National Police Service said that in a statement that out of 252 applicants, only 10 managed to pass the hurdle. So that will be starting tomorrow. All right, that's all I had on the Star newspaper. Steph?
On People's Daily, so much is making news here. But the main read says that open frontiers for trade, Ruto tells EAC leaders. And he has been quoted there saying, this is an emphatic signal that the African unity of our time has come of age, a continent united by opportunity and a Pan-Africanism driven by trade. So some of the issues raised at talks in the different countries have been summarized here on the front page. On matters goods, the EAC countries have been urged to remove trade barriers by adopting borderless community. On the gas pipe to start from Dar es Salaam, Mombasa, and later to Nairobi. This will lower the retail cost of energy. On matters peace, the African Union-led efforts will create stability for economic transformation and sustainable development. On food prices, Kenya will import wheat from Ethiopia, whose yields have increased sustainably. And the Lamu port has been proposed as home port for the southern part of Ethiopia. On telecoms, Safaricom to serve Ethiopia's 115 million people, transform the region's ICT landscape. On matters manufacturing, sorry about that, EAC asked to review spending on steel imports as raw materials are available locally. On regional trade, 8 African countries to do business together, guided by the African Continent Free Trade Area. So these are some of the things that have been discussed in the trips that the president have been to. On page 2, what will it take to end banditry in North Rift? So dangerous has the region become that it's only by God's grace that particularly for the dreaded GSU posted to the region return home to their families alive. This is a story by Zadok Angira of People Daily saying that the records indicate that most of the officers died through banditry attack, especially within the North Rift. Others have been killed by robbers, colleagues, terrorists, and even members of the public. So to answer this question, what will it take to end the banditry in North Rift? Some experts say, one of them is the former IG David Kimayo, says priority is to conduct proper disarmament in the area, come up with an alternative means of livelihood, and make education mandatory. The former GSU officer and security expert George Musamali says officers should be often well-equipped and properly briefed when pursuing bandits. And there's so many other experts quoted on that particular article. You can take a look at it sometime. To another news. The senior officers set for DCI director interviews today, which Victor has just gone through. So today is the day when they are going to be interviewed, the 10 of the shortlisted DCI officers. And lastly, on matters mental health, the highest teen suicide puzzles mental health pundits. And Africa reports the highest number worldwide in terms of the number of mental health cases that have been witnessed. Kenya media reported close to 5 suicidal deaths of school-going children in the last 1 month, including a Form 3 girl who committed suicide after she was accused by her teacher of stealing 2,500 shillings. This is one of the cases of the teenagers who have committed suicide during this period. A new report released over the weekend by the WHO showed that Africa has had the largest rate in the world of people dying by suicide. Around 11 people per 100,000 population die by suicide every year in Africa. So this is quite alarming, and they've also given there an article on just how health dietary patterns can help in this situation to lessen mental health problems in the population in the country. So you can also have a look at that. That's just some of the stories making news on People Daily. Doreen.
Pay cuts loom in Ruto budget plan. That is what you're waking up to this Tuesday morning on the Daily Nation. In fact, I should say brace yourself maybe for more tougher times. I should say this is even as anxiety continues to kick in as Treasury now looks into ways to cut off the 300 billion budget as it was mentioned by the president. This is what he had talked about some few weeks back. He even had intimated of perhaps not looking into borrowing from the international lenders. As we stand, our debt is still at 8.6 trillion, and actually this is set to begin today, being the Tuesday of October this year. And even as we speak, what Daily Nation has established is that there's a work plan that shows non-salary benefits such as allowances, including entertainment, travel, and spending on utilities will also be reviewed for cuts starting this morning. Also, multi-billion shilling a year office rent and guard and cleaning services contracts top the list of items marked for chopping. This is even as National Treasury begins on that implementation plan of the 2022-2023 year budget to see how best they can reduce on the budget. Even as we speak, the budget restructuring meeting are scheduled to begin, as I've said, today, and this is expected to run up until 21st of this month, with various departments under the big spender likely to be the first ones to appear before the Treasury Committee. And in that regard, Education Ministry is set to appear first before the Treasury team to see what exactly they can cut off. This is even as this particular department ministry was allocated 513.8 billion for this financial year. That is the 2022-2023 financial year. It's all about cutting on spending, as we are drawing from this particular article and even going by what the president talked about. So even as this is happening, there's still high cost of living as we look into 100 days in office of President Ruto. As we head over to that 100 days in office, still a lot is being said when it comes to issues of high cost of living, talking about basic commodities which have really gone on a high in the past couple of weeks, I should say. And this has also been attributed to the rise of inflation, which has largely been driven by increase in price of commodities. And this is under food and non-alcoholic beverages at 15.5%, transport at 10.2%, housing, water, electricity, gas, and other fuels at 7.3%. This article just continues to highlight how the cost of living has really gone high, and even as we continue to anticipate more of that perhaps in the coming days. Away from that, Wanjigi now says keep poll losers out of cabinet. This is one of those presidential aspirants in the 2022 elections. Of course, he didn't make it up to the final stage, but then he says to the president that he needs to keep off poll losers out of cabinet. We have largely talked about the principal secretary's position, which the list was reviewed from 477 to 585. And yes, as the Public Service Commission said, that this was all in a bid to ensure that there is proper inclusivity. But then also in that list are election losers, going by what we have here, and allies of President Ruto, including the immediate former Langata MP Nixon Korir and his Kiminini counterpart Chris Wamalwa, who lost in the Trans Nzoia governor contest. And so what he's just urging the president is that to ensure that in this positions of cabinet principal secretaries, and also there's a talk to bring back the CAS position, that he needs to keep off politicians from some of these offices. Also, this is taking cognizance of the fact that out of the 22 CS position nominee, we're seeing politicians taking a bigger chunk. And lastly, on matters health, India is a destination of choice for Kenyan patients. This is what the ministry says. This is the latest report by the Ministry of Health, which shows how Kenyans have really chosen Asia, particularly India, as a place of destination when it comes to their health matters. In fact, well, highlighting some of those counties with high numbers of those that really take to India for some of their health matters, key among them being Nairobi, Kiambu, Mombasa, and Uasin Gishu. Also in the report, it has indicated some of those diseases that most Kenyans go to India for treatment, of course, key among them being cancer, cardiovascular diseases, as well as renal diseases. That is what the Daily Nation is holding for you this Tuesday. Regina.
Now, we'll be back with what we have on the dailies, but after this quick breather. Thank Thank you for still keeping us company watching In the Headlines on KBC Channel 1. I have a copy of the Standard being the 11th of October 2022, a day that, pundits, political pundits who have been keeping tabs on the first 100 days of President William Ruto's regime. What has he delivered? What are the hits and misses? 30 days to go. And that is what we have on the front page. Hustlers miss out on Ruto's 30-day boon. Now, whereas friends and loyal politicians have been rewarded by appointments from the legislature to the executive, 30 days down the line, Wananchi Wanjiko is still experiencing tough times. Drought is ravaging the country. Fuel prices are at an all-time high, and the cost of living just got worse. They put it further in numbers. 179, that's the cost of super petrol, at least in Nairobi. And this is after Ruto's administration slammed the brakes on fuel subsidies that had gobbled a cool 144 billion shillings since the start. We also have a 230 shillings. That is how much you pay as a retail price for a 2 kg pack of unga maize meal there. 4 million, those are the drought effects with several counties there staring at drought. Millions of Kenyans are still waiting for the government to provide food aid and to ease pain. 50 billion. MSMEs are still awaiting the enactment of the Hustlers Fund to get affordable loans, and this was a grand promise and a key pillar to Ruto's manifesto. I want to quote one of the articles here, paragraph or so, that opines that the real test of this new administration's 100 days is not the short-term gains it delivers, but on how it has organized itself for the long-term answers to Kenyans' demands and desires. There are 75 days left to deliver, and this takes us all the way to December 2022, Thursday before Christmas. What will the KK Alliance have delivered? This is in regard to its 100-day plan, so to speak. Now we have the issue of the cabinet nominees who were gazetted on October 5th, and the committee on appointments is to vet them beginning today, that is October 11th. And Kenyans have until 14th to offer comment and input on these nominees. Now, the committee's vetting report would be ready towards the end of October. That's around October 27th. And the plan is to have the approval by the full House in the first week of November. And November 3rd will be day 51 since the inauguration, and assuming it all goes smoothly, let's assume the real work for the CSS will start around the following Monday. So we are looking at around the end of November or early December for this proposed CSS to actually begin work. So are we being realistic in expecting so much from the new administration, looking at 100 days and the promises that were made therein? Well, time will tell. That's just but a sneak peek of what has been given precedence on this particular article. Remember, further details are available on our website in regard to what has been making headlines regionally as well as on Matters Sports. Just a quick reminder, it is 40 days to go to the Qatar World Cup 2022, and KBC Channel 1 is going to be televising that. I hand you over to my colleague Victor Olo, who has on his panel and his guest list this morning none other than constitutional lawyer Gibson Gesore, to just take us through matters of what is happening as far as matters politics are concerned. To you, Victor.
Absolutely. But before I let you go, Regina, what's happening at the new enhanced NSE marketplace?
Well, we're expecting that even the president is going to be gracing this particular event, and our reporter Alan Oko has been on ground, and the NSE looking at what the NSE or the Nairobi boss stands for. This is matters of investments. There's been a lot of talk, especially between August, where we had Geoffrey Odundo there say that it was a time to invest because there was, a movement from the Nairobi boss by investors, national investors ahead ahead of the elections, but somewhat, if you look at the trends, it has quite been regaining its, its former glory, so to speak, owing to, the smooth elections that we witnessed, as well as the confidence after the Supreme Court ruling. So what is happening today? We're expecting that President Ruto is going to be gracing this event. And as I've mentioned, our reporter is already on ground. And just to give you a sneak peek of what is happening down there in regard to that particular matter, and as put by our reporter there, Alan Aoko, says that the NSE marketplace is set to provide an accelerated list route for leading companies through offering client-focused advisory and guidance to potential users, significantly reducing the time to market. I know a majority of Kenyans shy away from investing in the NSE, tending to think that, it requires a lot of time and also knowledge. But now with this particular listing and targeted kind of listing and advisory, it will make it easy for you to trade in the NSE, Victor.